Okay, so in this video we will go over 5 Iroi teams and their rotations. The first team will be a Nanally Blossom team. The second team will be a Shinku charged team with a 0. The third team will be a Shinku charged team without the 0. The fourth team will be a Chaos team, and then the fifth team will be a Lacrimosa team. So let us dive right into it. For the first team, and a lot of people are not going to be happy about this, it is the Nanally Blossom team. This Blossom team is made up of Iroi, Zero, G1 and Nanally. Yes, this is the best team for Nanally in the Blossom team, with Hotori actually being replaced by the Iroi. It is kind of unexpected, but the G1 and Iroi combo is quite strong. So to start things off, we start with Zero and cast his ultimate, followed by his skill. You swap to Iroi to trigger Blossom. You press on her skill and then her ultimate. As Iroi is jumping down from the sky during her ultimate animation, we hold the basic attack to make her immediately sit on her sheep. She will skip right to sitting on her sheep when you hold her basic attack after her ultimate. We swap to G1, we use her skill and then the ultimate to benefit from the energy refund. We immediately swap to Nanally. We use Nanally's skill and then her ultimate. Now after this, the rotation will be more simple. For the standard rotation, we will spam Nanally's basic attack while dodging as needed. We'll stay on the field with Nanally until her cycle is full. When her cycle is full, we will swap to Zero to trigger Blossom. We will then use his ultimate and then his skill. We will swap to Iroi to trigger Blossom. We will use her skill and her ultimate. And as she lands, we will then hold her basic attack until she sits on her sheep. We will swap to G1 and then use her skill and then her ultimate. And then back to Nanally to skill, ultimate and rinse and repeat. Now for team 2. This is the Shinku team. This team has Shinku, Hatho, Iroi and Zero. To start things off, we start with Shinku. We wait to ensure that she has maximum stacks of her gaze. Then we use them all by pressing on her skill.
If you can.
We then swap to Iroi to trigger Blossom. After this, we use her skill and then her ultimate. As she lands, we hold her basic attack to make her immediately sit on her ship. We swap to Zero and then use his ultimate and then his skill. We then swap to Hatho to trigger Remora and charge. We use her ultimate and then her skill. We then swap to Shinku and we activate her ultimate. After this, the rotation should be more simple. Whilst Shinku is in her burst form, we will use her skill whenever it lights up. This is when charge has filled it up. We will continue clicking on her ultimate to do the 3 dashes when the dashes appear. At the end of her ultimate, she will then shoot her Dragon Breath attack. Shinku's gauge should be full, so she should trigger Blossom when swapping to Iroi. After this, we will swap to Iroi. We will then use the skill and the ultimate, and then hold the charged attack again until she sits on her sheep. We swap to Zero, we ultimate and then we skill, and then we swap to Hatho. This should trigger Remora and charged. Then we use Hatho's ultimate and skill, and we swap back to Shinku. We return to Shinku and we can then rinse and repeat the rotation. That was it for the Shinku team with the Zero. Now it's time for the Shinku team without the Zero, which is only possible because Iroi has some off-field gauge buildup. This rotation focuses on maximizing Shinku's DPS by adding on Heniel's attack buff. We start things off with the Shinku at max stacks. We use her skill to spend all her stacks and then we immediately swap to Iroi. We use her skill, we perform 5 basic attacks to reach the first imagination threshold. We then hold the basic attack until Iroi sits on her sheep. She will do it slower this time because we did not get her ultimate up. We immediately swap back to Shinku and fill up her cycle, whether we use gaze or basic attacks.
No release.
Once the cycle is filled, we swap to Hanyal and immediately swap back to Iroi. We do this to preserve Shinku's cycle. We use Iroi's skill followed by her ult. As she lands, we hold the basic attack to make her immediately sit on the sheep. We immediately swap to Shinku as Iroi's cycle will be filled. This will trigger Blossom, and then we immediately swap to Hathor to trigger the Remora and the Charged. We use Hathor's ultimate and her skill, and then we swap to Hanyal. From Hanyal, we will use her ultimate and then her skill, and then we will enter Shinku and use her ultimate. This is Shinku's burst window. We then use Shinku's ultimate. During her ultimate, we will spam her skill whenever the icon lights up. We will continue clicking on her ultimate whenever it is available so that she may use her 3 dashes, and then she may use her dragon attack. Once the burst ends, we can then repeat the rotation. We swap to Iroi, we use only her skill and 5 basics and swap to Hathor. We can use Hathor's ultimate and skill and then swap to Hanyal. We only use Hanyal's skill and then swap to Shinku. We do this to save those 2 buffs for when Shinku's ultimate is ready. We then fill up Shinku's cycle and then we repeat. We go back to Hanyal to preserve the cycle. We then swap to Iroi, we skill and then we ultimate. After the ultimate, we hold her basic attack so that she can skip the skill, and then we swap to Shinku, trigger the Blossom, swap to Hathor, trigger the Remora and the Charge, and then swap back to Hanyal, use her ult, and then we go to the Shinku for the burst window again. It is literally rinse and repeat at that point, just ensuring that during the second rotation you save those ultimates for the burst window. And now for the Chaos rotation and team. This team involves Zero, Chaos, Iroi, and Hathor. To start things off, we start with Zero and cast his ultimate and then his skill. We swap to Chaos to trigger the Remora. We then swap to Iroi to use her skill and her ultimate. As she lands, we hold the basic attack to make her immediately skip sitting on her sheep. We swap to Hathor to use her burst and her skill. We then swap back to Chaos to skill and then use his ult. We then perform basic attacks to stack the crime energy until the gauge is full. When it is full, we then use the crime. We do this until Chaos fills his cycle bar. Once his cycle is filled, we swap to Zero to trigger the Remora. We then use Zero's skill and then swap to Iroi to trigger the Blossom and the Charged. We then use Iroi's skill, swap to Hathor and use her skill, then we swap to Chaos, we skill and then auto attack until the ultimate is ready, whilst using the crime whenever it is full. We use Chaos's ultimate whenever it is full, and then we rinse and repeat the cycle. And last but not least in terms of teams, but one of the least favorable places to use the Iroi. But then again, she is a support and can slot in anyway. If you want to use your Iroi with your Lacrimosa, this is the team for you. You want your Lacrimosa, you want your Sakiri, you want your Iroi, and you want your Hanyal. To execute the rotation, we'll start with Lacrimosa. You immediately switch into her ranged mode. When you see the animation for the swap, you swap cancel to Iroi. On Iroi, you use her skill and then her ultimate. As she lands, you hold the basic attack to make her immediately sit on her sheep. You immediately swap to Hanyal, while Iroi's Gatling sheep is firing. Hanyal should use her ultimate and then her skill, and swap to Sakiri. Sakiri should also use her ultimate and then use her skill, and then you swap back to Lacrimosa. Once Lacrimosa is back on the field, you use her skill. If you currently have a long animation skill on her skill, you can briefly swap to Sakiri while the animation goes on and return to Lacrimosa to begin her primary damage string. Lacrimosa's main combat sequence involves 4 basic attacks and a dash cancel to cancel the 5th attack. This is essential as the 5th basic attack has a slow animation and should be avoided. After Lacrimosa's cycle is filled, you swap to Sakiri, you use her skill, you swap to Iroi, use her skills, swap to Haniel, use her skill, and you use their ultimates whenever they are available. Always swapping from Lacrimosa to the Sakiri to trigger the Scorch. Rinse and repeat. That is it for this rotation guide videos. For more videos like this, leave a like and subscribe, and I shall see you guys in the next one.